You know, last year you ruptured your Achilles. And I want to read this, Georgia, something that you said. Let me just find it. You said, I know this is a long recovery. I need to shift my priorities. I have a lot of inner demons to fight right now, but I know myself and I know I will battle to be on the top again. There is nothing that I cannot do and I can't prove, and I can't wait to prove that to myself. Walk me through that, Georgia, because you've had some injuries before, but man, this is a tough one because, it's one thing to be optimistic in that moment, right? But the feeling fades. And when you ruptured your Achilles, got the surgery, you're probably high on the meds a little bit, you're feeling good, but then you got to go back and then you got to go to sleep and then you got to wake up and you got to look down and say, holy crap, this is an injury also, Georgia, that has taken out a lot of people. Donovan Bailey comes to mind, Christian Taylor dealing with the same thing. How did you handle the day-to-day battle of finding the strength to get back up to be you again?
Yeah, I'm not going to say it was easy in any way. And even that, it's like I was saying that probably crying, like being like, I don't want to do this,
Yeah.
but I can't put that out there. People don't want to hear that, they want to hear that I'm willing to get back up again. And even if I didn't feel it at the time, I knew I would be willing because of my character. It's just hard to process initially. Because I was hitting PBs like every week and that happened. And I'm like, I have to just let this go. Like I have to sit here with this cast on my foot, knowing I'm in the best shape of my life and just let it ride out. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to tape it up and get back out there, And I think the magnitude of the time that I had to put in was really hard to process at first, knowing I was already qualified for the Commonwealth Games and the World Championships. I had to write those completely off and just say, we're going to get back at it next year. I'm going to have to re-qualify for the Worlds this year, which I obviously haven't qualified for, and the Olympics next year. So we got a lot of work to do. But thinking about that was only going to be daunting at that time. So I had to scale it completely bare again and say, okay, what is my task right now? Like my task right now is to get the surgery done. That's number one. Then talk to my surgeon about what our timeline looks like. When are we going to try and get competition ready again? When are we going to do this? And so I think it took me a couple weeks to transform my mind into wanting to be the best heptathlete there was to walking again. And that's not an easy transition to do. But if you break it down into pieces, I feel like it was doable. And that's the only way that I was able to do it. I had to not think, because I kept saying before my injury, before my injury, before my injury. It's like, I need to make a clear cut. This is like me now. I have a newly attached Achilles. Like I'm not the same person, like my calf looks like it's like a calf of a 5-year-old. Like it's not who I was before. And I think I have to stop comparing that. Like even my point totals, things like that, I'm still on a process right now. And so even if I score something, it's a PB with this injury or with this new body that I have or whatever. And I have to look at it that way. So every new activity that I did, like if I scrunch sling with my toe that I couldn't have before, I was like, that's a new task that I did with a new like Achilles. And it's really hard to give yourself rewards for things that you were able to do when you were 3 years old, but you have to also be fascinated with your body and what it can do and how it can heal, because it's really interesting to me that my surgeon was able to reattach that and now I'm able to run again. It's like that's something that I was born with and they had to physically alter it. And I have like screws in my heel bone and now it's working again, like it's up and working. So I have to kind of give some credit to my body to allowing myself to get back out there. And I have to be grateful for that first. Although that, dedication and that hungry mindset is still in there. So I have to manage that a little bit. I also have to not define my times right now as who I am, but more as like a step along the way. And that's been the hardest part right now because I'm seeing times that I haven't seen since probably high school. And I'm like, oh, I'm like a bad hurdler. I'm bad. And that's what you want to think right away. But you have to think like, this is just a stepping stone to where I want to go. I'm showing up, like give myself some credit for showing up and racing and getting back out there, because the more I do it, the better I'm going to get. And so I'm excited because I think the more I'm doing it, the more I'm kind of getting back to uh, having that confidence again. Um, but it's hard to juggle the mindset. Like you have to keep thinking that you're one of the best. And when you're not having one of the best times, like if your times are like for fourth, fifth, sixth, or whatever, you still have to keep that mindset. And that's the hardest balance to have. You have to keep thinking you're the best when you're not the best. And I've been struggling with that a little bit, but I think I've gained it back more so now. And I'm really excited to do this nationals because I think I'm practicing that more than ever, even if it's not a reality yet. Mm-hmm.
Man, that's powerful, Georgia. Have you always been someone to be able to let go of what you think something should be and accept what is?
No, I'm my harshest critic. I think I almost like, I don't know. I think I am, when I'm like, my teammates have told me often, like if I'm doing something, I'll almost like buffer it, and I need to buffer it as in like, oh, I'm bad at shot, like this isn't going to go far anyways, like things like that. And so if I'm buffering it, it's like if I do well, then I surprised everybody kind of
Surprise, yeah.
thing. Yeah. And I think I need to, if I say that too much, I'm going to start thinking it. And so I need to really shift what's going on in my head. And I'm not going to like tell everyone I'm the best or like do things like that, but it's like I need to give myself some positive feedback and reinforcement, because that's the only way that I can shift that in my head. So I think it's hard because I see times like that, I see distance like that, and I am like, that's where I am. That's the reality of it. Let's just accept that that's the time that I'm seeing right now. But it's also not where I'm going to end up. And I need to realize that as well. Like, this is where I'm at now. This is not where I want to be, but this is where I can end up if I keep showing up. And so I think the ugly part is like right now. And if you go through the ugly part, there's going to be rewards at the end. And so it's just not the fun part right now, but I do have faith that as my leg gets stronger, as I get stronger, as I get faster, and I have more time to rehearse my events, then next year is going to be a good year. Mm-hmm.
A lot of people always say, and I used to argue with it on the other side. They used to say, yo, trust the process. You gotta love the process. And I used to hear it so much. I'm like, yo, y'all must be some actors, because look, all of the process is not fun. All of that process is not fun. It's
No.
not fun to train when you're sore. It's not fun to get embarrassed when you don't run well. It's not fun
Mm-hmm.
when things are not going well. It's just not fun. But as you just said, it's when you continue pushing through and continue showing up. Honestly, half the battle is continuing to show up, because even on your worst day, when you show up, you don't know what could happen. I'm sure you've been
Mm-hmm.
into meets sometimes where you felt terrible,
Mm-hmm.
but yet, you know, you might have PR'd or PB'd in one of the events. I have a couple more questions for you, Georgia. I have to
Mm-hmm.
ask, this new version of you coming off of the injury, you were probably able to do things a little bit easier before, but the routine and the consistency is kind of similar. How
Mm-hmm.
do you handle the mundane days, right? Like, how were you handling the, man, I got rehab today. I'm going to do a
Mm-hmm.
curl today. I can't do much with the legs, but I can do, it gets tedious. Track and field to some extent is boring, right? I'm not just,
Mm-hmm.
it's a little boring, but it's the boring days stacked up on top of each other that cultivate these habits that translate to you doing well when it's time, when the pressure is on. But how were you handling those mundane days when you weren't in the best mood, when you didn't have positive thoughts
Mm-hmm.
and didn't even want to really show up today because you're like, man, I could have done that 6 years ago. I can't lift my legs. What is this?
Mm-hmm.
How did you handle that?
Yeah, I think about that a lot because I went through weeks and months of that. Like, I think the hardest thing with this injury is the time it takes to recover. And also, it doesn't work in a linear way. Like, it is so inconsistent. Like, you'll be able to jog one day and not be able to stand on it the next. And you can't understand why. And I think
No.
that's the most frustrating thing, because you think you're making progress and then it takes you back to the start again. And so I had to, and I would go through phases. So it would be like a 6-week phase until I could do maybe like a calf raise, and then another 6 weeks until I could maybe do like a little hop or like something like that. And so I almost had to take myself not into a place where I analyzed if I enjoyed it or not, because I didn't, like I just didn't. But I had to take myself into a place as if it were a 9 to 5 job. Like, you are responsible to show up to your job on time. You're responsible to do the tasks that are given to you, and then you can leave. And so I pretended I was pretty much like a robot. Like, these are the tasks ingrained in my head, get them done, and then go on with your day. So it's not like I thought to myself, oh, this is so boring. This is so whatever. It was like, show up, do it, leave. It was literally, unfortunately, going
Yeah,
through the
yeah,
motions. Like,
yeah.
there's things in track that you do enjoy and you push and you have a lot of emotional attachment to it. But I couldn't afford to do that because I think I would have got myself into a very dark place if I did. So I just looked at it as if it was a necessary job that I had to do to get to where I wanted to get a promotion or whatever it is. And
That's
so I
good.
think,
Yeah.
yeah, it was very like robotic. It was very like, I took the emotions completely away from it. And maybe some people can't do that, but for me, it was necessary and it worked. And that it might not be the best advice for somebody who does process their emotions in a different way, but I had to keep those separate. I had to say it is purely a physical task that is necessary for me to do if I want to achieve what I want to achieve.